Good morning. We're going to be looking at how we can use a GUI system so we can talk about some of the stuff that goes along with it. So we've got some vocab words we want to make sure we address and go over before we actually look at some of the code that goes along with that. So we take a look at our vocab list right here. We have some terms we want to make sure we hit and understand. We first have our J-frame. This is the class that we're going to use as our base class to actually hold that. And remember, when we're talking about a frame, it's just like a frame that you have with a window at home. It's the box that goes around it. If we look over here in this quick example, we can see that the frame is this component right here, the part that we pick up and move when we're talking with a graphical user interface system like Windows, Mac, or Linux. It's the part that we pick up and move, that actual piece of the app. And that's the frame class. JFrame is the Java Swing library component that we use to actually do the major, that heavy lifting to do that. So it's the code that actually makes the window appear and be closed or opened or moved around. Inside the frame, we have a panel. Specifically, we'll be using a subclass of the class JPanel. Again, we have that J prefix, which indicates it's a Java class, part of the Swing library system. And we'll be going over that in quite a bit of detail. Some of the components we use most often, JButton and JLabel. A JButton, just like it sounds, it's a button, and a label, it holds some text. Something we can click on? No. Something we can actually see and read? Yes. The layout we'll be using in class is going to be a spring layout. A spring layout allows us to have a bit of a spring or a way of having some shared, a way to squish between things on that. If we look over here in this example right here, you can see that on this one I have attachment from the top to the button and from this wall right over here to this button as well. I could also even attach on this level from here to here and from here to here to go along with it. So you can have as many springs as you want for north, east, south, and west connections. And you can have it so when you resize the window that you stretch and skew as needed, so you can have it go along with that. And we'll see how that works. By default, the JPanel uses what's called a flow layout. I have it listed over here in red because we're not going to use it. A flow layout simply just puts things into the window, and it puts them in, and it fits in like here's this one, and here's this one, and here's this one. And when we get to the end of the page, guess what? We go back to the beginning and throw it over right here. Boom, 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 boom. Now, that does not look like a very well-planned or designed app, so we're not going to use that. So we're not actually going to use the flow layout system at all. We will be using, however, the action listener and the action event components. The action listener is an example of an interface. We'll go into a lot of detail on that, but the big thing we have to know right now when we're using an action listener is an action listener has a required method. That required method is action performed. And you have to make sure you spell that action performed with lowercase a, capital P, and not preformed or performed or anything else like that. Make sure you spell the method properly. We'll be using that quite a bit. Action event is the actual component that happens when you click the button. You press enter inside the text field. You have a slider event happening with that. So the action listener listens for the action event. And so just like the word here, listener, it's giving us a clue as to what's actually happening inside the code. And so we want to make sure that when we use this, we attach that properly and actually use our brains to solve that problem. The next vocabulary list right here, we have a couple of helper methods we'll be using. We have our setup frame helper method. This is the method we'll be using inside our JFrame subclass. It's going to handle all the component pieces that we use to actually put our frame together. Inside our panel class, we have three helper methods we'll be working with. Setup panel, setup layout, and setup listeners. The setup panel helper method is what we use to attach all of our GUI components after initializing the constructor to the panel itself. We're going to add them to it. Now, if we use this lovely Spring layout as our layout manager, it first is going to put them all inside just that top left corner as a way we can then put them to where we want. The setup layout methods where we're going to dump all the code that the GUI management system of using of our Spring layout handles to put them in there so we can actually put the constraints on it as to where they're going to go on this part of the screen or this part of the screen or over here and align this. We'll have them all aligned vertically over here. And that's going to happen inside our setup layout method. And that's, again, where we're going to put all that generated code. Our setup listeners method, the helper method we also call inside the constructor, is where we attach listeners to all of our GUI components that have user-based events. And so we can have that automatically linked together in a nice clean pile of information. We can use that as necessary. The repaint method is how if we need to do something that's going to actually tell our GUI to change what's going on, we don't call its paint component method or anything directly. We use the repaint method call, which will actually go through and tell the appropriate components to redraw themselves as needed inside the app. And we'll see that in some of our more advanced videos. Again, we're using the Swing library for the vast majority of the code we're working with. This is Java's second version of GUI, but we still use some of the AWT components, especially color and action event. And so most of our imports will happen from the Swing library. We'll have a couple from the AWT library, but we also have to really make sure we have this amazing vocab word, extends. This is how we're going to actually tie in and use the component pieces of our parent class and have access to the data and methods they have available to them inside the classes we're creating. Extends is the inheritance keyword in Java, and what it can do for us is so much, and we'll be seeing direct examples of that in class. So, using this as a nice little framework of some of the vocab you need to have to do some GUI, let's go ahead and take a look at how we can do some more with GUI programming. Check out some of my videos, and we'll go from there. Have a great day.